Truth and the Circle Around It by KG Scott, otherwise known as, on YouTube, Rage in the Cage. Chapter 7, Life Goes On. 0955, October 11, 1988, Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. RCMP K Division in Edmonton, Alberta is the regional headquarters for the province of Alberta. Therefore, you can imagine it's a busy place. Officers from all over go there periodically for training, requalifications, or to carry out tasks as investigations. Joe has been here about 3 times before. The Seattle Bureau works with the RCMP all the time. You would think they have more dealings with F Division in Regina or E Division in Vancouver, but surprisingly, the Edmonton office gets the majority of visits from the Seattle field office. Scott McMaster had moved over to the RCMP from military intelligence 2 years ago. So to be offered such a big assignment the day after being posted to K Division was not really a surprise. It shouldn't ruffle anyone's feathers given his experience, but some people still looked at him as a new guy. But some people still looked at him as a new guy. The assignment would involve working undercover up in Grand Prairie to get inside a company that was employing a bunch of mafia boys. It was a front to hide people that were in trouble in other countries. They would be brought to one of those cities in Canada or the States and get a work permit under an assumed name. They could usually hide as long as they wanted to because when the permits expired, all that had to be done was send them to a new place under a new name. The catch was that in order to keep these companies from being looked into, they had to do actual legitimate jobs and employ enough locals that no one would get suspicious. The chances of him being recognized are really slim. All the employees have been checked. Not only that, but he's got a pretty good disguise going on, and for the past 11 years, he's been fairly hidden away. From the day he switched to the police, he's known undercover. Oh my. Bless me, for I have sneezed. He's known undercover. It was a front to hide people that were in trouble in other countries. They would be brought to one of those cities in Canada or the States and get a work permit under an assumed name. They could usually hide as long as they wanted to because when the permits expired, all that had to be done was send them to a new place under a new name. The catch was that in order to keep these companies from being looked into, they had to do actual legitimate jobs and employ enough locals that no one would get suspicious. The chances of him being recognized are really slim. All the employees have been checked. Not only that, but he's got a pretty good disguise going on, and for the past 11 years, he's been fairly hidden away. From the day he switched to the police, he's known undercover is where he was headed. He doesn't get out much, and most definitely not into the world most of these people live in. Yes, the operation already underway by the FBI has been relayed to the MP, and now the two agencies are planning together. To decline an invitation to take part in the venture. They already have a task force that has been trying to catch up to Alvarez and Friends, which is concentrating its efforts in Eastern Canada. And no one will share information unless something overlaps. The month of training has passed, and it's time to get the operation underway. Joe Myers, Bruce Bales, aka Tom Kendall, Bob Riley, Scott McMaster, aka Derek Miles, and Kevin Shears will all be in the building at the same time. They will all be in meetings, although not the same ones at the same times. They will have to work together, but they won't all know exactly what is going on. There is a leak somewhere, but they don't know where. For this reason, they are the only ones who know about this operation, other than Nguyen and Clark. A pretty receptionist puts down her phone and looks over at the well-dressed man in the waiting room. Excuse me, Special Agent Myers. Inspector Nguyen is off the phone now. Go right in. Thank you, miss. Joe puts down the weekly news magazine and picks up his briefcase, then gets up and walks in the open door. Special Agent Joe Myers, I'm Inspector Hong Nguyen. The inspector says as the two men shake hands. Have a seat over at the coffee table. I prefer to work over there if you don't mind. Not at all, sir. Joe quickly looks around at the spacious, well-decorated yet simple office. This is a nice office you have, sir. Oh, hey, call me Hung. I don't worry too much about rank. We're all here to do the job, and I don't expect my guys to get too official either, Hung remarked. Two of the members from Grand Prairie will be here in half an hour. I briefed them earlier this morning and sent them to get the cars and equipment you'll need. Joe is anxious to find out how high-tech this operation is going to be. What kind of equipment are you talking about, Hung? Hung, well, since my regular appointment is OIC, OIC of our Special Operations Division, I get to take advantage of all the latest equipment. Due to the severity of what Alvarez has been up to, I've basically been given a blank check. Hung holds up the coffee pot and gestures the offer of a fresh cup. Don't mind if I do. Thanks, Hung. I'll take some cookies too. Joe, I'm trying something new. I have a habit of doing that. In fact, the young fellow named Shears you'll be working with is just a kid. He's only 20 or 21, and he's not even a full member. You've heard of our auxiliary program? Oh, yes, I've worked with Shears before. Hung pauses for a quick second as he is surprised by the comment. Good, well, then you know a few things about him. Tough, not just for his size either. I wouldn't fight him if I had a gun, and I carry a gun. The two men have a laugh together. Then Joe says with concern, but he's pretty naive. Are you sure about his participation? His file does show a need for maturity, but his status allows us to give him some latitude and freedom that the rest of us tend to avoid. Hung takes a sip of coffee and a bite of cookie, pausing to allow Joe to speak. This is all sugar and cream with a drop of coffee. pausing to allow Joe to speak, but Joe is interrupted by a knock at the frame of the open door. Talking about me, eh? Kevin says while he knocks on the door jam. Hey, you little brat, how the hell are you? Joe laughs as he gets up to shake Kevin's hand. Well then, I take it you two have worked together before? Hong asks. Worked with me too, sir, Bob said as he punched Joe hard in the shoulder and then jumped behind Kevin, laughing and pretending to taunt Joe to fight. Go ahead, you big bruiser. I've got a bodyguard. You two are a little early, Hong said as he motioned for them to have a seat. That's because we're good, Hong, Bob chuckled. Did you get everything on the list? Hong asked. Got it all, Hong. Hong. I'll run everyone through it after lunch, Bob said as he handed a fully filled out checklist to the inspector. Good. Brenda, the receptionist, knocks on the door. Mr. Nguyen, your operative is here. He's downstairs in briefing room 2. Thank you, Brenda. Gentlemen, I'm going to be asking a lot of you. Probably more of you, Joe, Kevin. I know you've had to handle a lot since you've been an auxiliary member. I'll understand if you decide not to participate in this operation. Why is that, sir? Kevin asks as he looks around the room at the others. I think I may know what he's getting at, Kiddage. Bob says to Kevin. May I, Hung? May I, Hung? Go ahead, Bob. Bob took a big breath in and let it out slowly. Kevin, we may have to deal with situations that you haven't fully been trained for. We might have to ask you to do some things that are outside the boundaries police officers normally don't cross. Kevin's expression took on the kill look mixed with almost pale fear. He took a deep breath and twisted his neck around so it would crack a few times. Well, isn't that just great? He said with disgust. Can I look forward to being jumped by 4 guys outside a bar again, or having people trying to cut me up everywhere I go? You see, the Visconti family is one up the controlling mafia type organizations in Canada. Oh, one of the controlling mafia type organizations in Canada. They are getting bigger and more powerful all the time. When Kevin and Joe worked together before, they were dealing with people who worked with the Visconti's people, like Antonio Alvarez. There were some incidents. Kevin, I seem to remember you have the talent to take care of these problems. Hung asked with authority, as if he expected only one answer. He wasn't about to get the yes he wanted. Permission to speak freely, Inspector? Kevin said as he sat up straight in his seat. Go ahead, Hung replied. Am I here to be a bodyguard for someone again, or do real police work? Both. Kevin lets out a groan. When am I going to become a full member? That doesn't have anything to do with this, and you know it. Hung is now a little pissed off. I've sent a letter of recommendation along from your staff sergeant in Fort St. John, and if you do well on this assignment, you'll get one from me. So now, are you going to do this or not? I'll tell you when I know more details, Kevin said as he crossed his arms, put his right ankle up on his left knee, and leaned back into the leather couch. I suppose you would like another tryout with the national team? Would that make a difference without being a full member, sir? What does that mean? Joe asked, looking back and forth between the two arguing men. It means there are several high-ranking members who believe I shouldn't be allowed to take part in anything, until I've been through depot training in Regina. I agree. Kevin is trying not to growl or grind his teeth while he's explaining this all to Joe. But Nguyen is starting to steam, and Kevin is not going to back down. The national team refers to the guys who work on the security task force. It's part of the Protective Services Division. The guys that protect important people, escort dignitaries, do special surveillance, take care of security and intelligence for high profile events, those kind of things. Like our Secret Service? Joe replied as both a comment and a question. Sort of, Nick Ewan answered. Yeah, well, anyway, about 6 months ago, I tried out for the STF, Kevin was explaining. I went to one of our military bases in Chilwick, British Columbia, and began the qualifying. But I was pulled off after it was discovered I didn't have the qualifications or really the right to even be there. So it burnt some bridges? Joe asked as he realized where the conversation was going. Yeah, but I didn't burn them. They were burnt for me, Kevin remarked as he looked at McEwen. Who did? McEwen asked sarcastically as he stared back at his young subordinate. I did, Bob said. I pulled in a couple favors to get Kevin there, thinking that would get him into the depot. Well, it won't, McEwen said. No, and your promises won't either, sir. Kevin stood up and walked towards the door. Kevin, get back here and sit down, Bob ordered. Yeah? Kevin stopped at the door, not turning to face anyone. I knew I didn't have a choice. I never fucking do with you and your happy little jobs I do for you. That is enough, Constable, the Ewan ordered the young man. Kevin turned quickly. Fuck you. I'm not a constable. My rank is corporal, and if you want me to give a fuck how much embroidery you walk around with, you'll drop the crap and treat me like one. And another thing, auxiliary or not, I'll get paid from now on, sir. Kevin had the bad habit that most young people do. He thought he knew more than he did. It seemed to him that he always had to prove himself before he could go ahead with the simplest of tasks. Not only that, but Kevin had been through a hell of a lot more than most 21-year-olds. Even people that age who were regular members of the force, which is what Kevin aspired to be all his life. So he figured he had earned a few things. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. So pissing off Nguyen was a bad thing. He had the power to stop Kevin's career right in its tracks. He didn't, but he could have. Joe and Bob managed to settle Kevin and the inspector down. Once everyone took a break, the meeting resumed without any further problems. Kevin was actually the only one other than Nguyen that met everyone involved with the operation and would be the only one who would be in contact with everyone. He had a very important job that involved only a little more than doing his day job at the delivery service, which he had managed to get back. Things were supposed to be easy, unless, of course, the shit hit the fan. Then he would have more to do than anyone and be put in one of the most dangerous positions. Hung wanted to wrap up the meeting. Bob, there are a couple people downstairs I want you to talk to. Joe and Kevin, you two can sit in the listening room. They're both young offenders. Bob looked at Hong with a slight smile. Are they the ones from the Royal Bank heist last month? Yes. We had them brought in from the remand center for a couple days so we could do the polygraph and mental fitness evaluations. I would like you to spend a few minutes with them together. Okay, but why together? Bob asked. This was very unusual. Because they have been asking to talk to you, Hong replied, as if he was waiting for a reaction. The room became very silent, and Bob and Hong looked into each other's eyes for a few moments. Let's go get them. Let's go then, boys, Bob said as he started to gather up his files. I think I know what they want. Next up, Chapter 8. Turn up the heat. This has been a reading of The Truth and the Circle Around It by K.G. Scott, otherwise known as Rage in the Cage on YouTube. Over and out.